Hey everybody, HomeSliceHenry here, and in today's video, we're taking a look at a Pokemon that's Great League eligible for the first time ever, GIRATINA Origin. With the Road to Sinnoh event, Niantic gave us free research that if you complete it, you get access to a level 15 GIRATINA Origin. And this can be traded and get below 1500 CP and therefore be eligible for Great League. GIRATINA Origin has some very compelling meta wins, including beating meta staples like Whiscash and Skarmory neutrally in even shield scenarios. So without further ado, let's hop into the matches and let's check out Great League GIRATINA Origin for the first time ever. Picking up an amazing lead in the first match, GIRATINA Origin into Annihilate, opponent save switches into Dugong, and I'm going to respond with Registeel. This team as a whole is extremely weak to Ice. I threw the team together once I got the Pokemon. It definitely has some weaknesses, but I'm hoping that I'll be able to get some good games out of it and at least showcase what a Great League GIRATINA Origin can do. I get the Zap Cannon debuff, so I will survive a Drill Run. My opponent knows that, so instead they're going to go for an Icy Wind. This means that they're going to be able to tank the Zap Cannon, and that means they're not going to have to expend their final shield. So they're going to be able to fire off the Drill Run. I'm just going to let this through, and if I survive, I'm going to aggressively pivot into the GIRATINA. In comes the GIRATINA. GIRATINA able to get the farm down and exit with energy. In the back, it's a Azumarill. It's a Fairy type into my Dragon type, but this is the unique coverage of GIRATINA. GIRATINA is going to be resisting the bubbles. Opponent has to fire off a decently expensive Ice Beam or Play Rough if they want to do any meaningful damage here, and I can just look to continually overfarm. Here, I'm going to build up and try and go for charge attack priority as they make it to the next Ice Beam. The Shadow Ball is shielded. There was a little bit of lag there, so it looks like it may not have been charge attack priority after all. They're going to fire off the Ice Beam, and now in comes Annihilate. I'm going to need a very careful overfarm. I overfarm, go for the Shadow Ball. That's going to be goodbye to the Annihilate. Back in comes the Azumarill, and it's going to be met with the Ominous Wind. The Ominous Wind takes them to 1 HP, and one more Shadow Claw will secure the win. Moving into the next match, hitting GIRATINA Origin into Whiscash. This is a matchup that on paper, GIRATINA Origin is able to win all even shield scenarios. However, to win the 2 shield, you do have to get 2 successful Ominous Wind baits. That feels a bit risky, so I'm going to full send the Shadow Ball here. The Shadow Ball into the Whiscash will be shielded, and now I know I'm only going to be able to win the 0s and the 1s now. The Mud Bomb is going to be shielded up. Opponent is going to send in Shadow Gligar. I'm farming up, and I'm not baiting. I'm going for another Shadow Ball. GIRATINA Origin has a pretty decent attack stat, combining that with the fact that Shadow Ball is a very good move. And this thing, if you don't have a Ghost Resist, is going to do a ton of damage. Like, watch this. I'm able to win charge attack priority over the Gligar. This Shadow Gligar is still pretty healthy, but the Shadow Ball picks up the KO, and we are seeing so much work put in here by the GIRATINA. In the back, it's Skarmory, and I have the alignment that I need. I can put Registeel on the Skarmory, and when my opponent switches into the Whiscash, I'm going to send in the Shadow Gligar. Thankfully, this is a non-Shadow Whiscash. I have the Shadow Gligar, but I'm still going to be able to absorb the Scald damage here. Scald is going to do a decent chunk of damage, but I'm going to be able to make it to the Dig. The Dig, while not KOing after the debuff, should be able to get them low enough. They're forced to fire off a last-second charge attack, but this is just farm for the Registeel at this point, and Skarmory is just unable to beat Registeel. Skarmory is another Pokemon that I would say honestly feels a bit similar to the GIRATINA, in that it doesn't really have any coverage to speak of whatsoever, but it is incredibly strong neutrally. But if you're in a situation where you're going to be resisting its charge attacks, then you're going to be doing pretty well against it. Moving into the next match, hitting GIRATINA Origin into Shadow Dragonair. Even though I do win the 0s, I'm going to look to switch out. Opponent is going to send in a Whiscash, and I definitely don't mind baiting out the Whiscash here whatsoever. I'm going to be firing off the Dig. The Dig is going to be shielded by my opponent, and they did enough Dragon Breath damage that a Scald actually does threaten a knockout. So I am going to commit the shield. I don't get debuffed. That's a pretty nice stroke of luck. I'm going for another Dig. This will not knock out, but it's going to get the opponent low. They're double shielding. I try and go for the Aerial Ace, but this is an attack-weighted Whiscash that is able to win charge attack priority. I've gotten the final shield from my opponent, and now I can send in the GIRATINA and use it as an opportunity to get ahead on energy. Because of course, Dragonair's Shadow Dragon Breaths are going to do quite a lot to the GIRATINA, but they don't have a resistance to Ghost, meaning that Shadow Ball should basically just KO them. I was looking to go for a Shadow Ball charge attack priority tie on their Mud Bomb, but unfortunately I miscounted, so instead I'm just going to overfarm and go for the Ominous Wind. I can make it to a Shadow Ball before Dragonair is able to pick up the knockout, so instead they're going to send in Lantern, and I should just be in the driver's seat of this match. Shadow Ball is going to connect, opponent sends in the Dragonair, and I can respond with the Registeel. Registeel is going to be hit with the Aqua Tail from the Shadow Dragonair, and Shadow Dragonair can put up quite the fight versus Registeel in the 2-shield, but with shields down, the Shadow Dragonair is just so vulnerable. They're going for yet another Aqua Tail. I can tank that and then go for the Focus Blast. Focus Blast is going to pick up the knockout. In comes the Lantern. Lantern needs a Thunderbolt if they want a KO here, but they're unable to get there. Registeel makes it to the Focus Blast. Focus Blast KOs the Lantern, and we take the win. Moving into the next match, picking up a pretty decent lead, Giratina Origin into Skarmory. Giratina is able to win the Zero Shield if you call a Sky Attack bait, or if you want to, you can stay in here and just play out the 2s, as Giratina does win the 2s fairly comfortably. I go for the Ominous Wind bait, and my opponent is actually going to commit the shield. That's quite nice. The bait isn't necessary to win the 2s, but it does mean that I can win the 2s with slightly more HP intact. I'm looking to overfarm. Opponent is going to switch and make a catch onto Registeel. Registeel is another Pokemon that Giratina Origin has an incredibly good matchup against. I would love to save this energy for later, so that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to rebank the energy and then switch into the Gligar as the opponent makes it to the Zap Cannon. The Zap Cannon is not going to do a whole lot of damage. I could go for a dig and pick up a knockout, but instead, I would actually rather go for an Aerial Ace and a Farm Down. As this way, I'm going to exit with energy that I can use, and I should be able to make it to a dig versus the Skarmory. The Zap Cannon is going to connect, looking for the Farm Down here. In comes the Skarmory, and I'm going to be firing off the dig. The dig is going to do some okay damage onto the Skarmory. Skarmory gets the Farm Down. I send in the Giratina. Maybe an Ominous Wind would have KO'd there. It's day 1 using this Pokemon in the Great League, so I wasn't 100% sure. So I went for the Shadow Ball to ensure the knockout. In the back is Dragonair, and I try and go for the Ominous Wind, and I'm unable to get there. That's mistake number 1. Now you may remember that Registeel actually switched out from the opponent on 1 HP. But in the moment when battling, to be 100% transparent, I forgot that they still had a Registeel alive. So, unfortunately, you can probably see what's about to happen. I'm able to grab the final shield from the opponent, go for the Focus Blast, but they catch it. Just a beautiful catch by my opponent. I forgot they had a Reggie back there, and that catch by the opponent is going to be what gives them this win, as now they can go for the Aqua Tail, and the Dragon Breaths will just do too much damage, and I lose the game. We see a familiar lead in the next match, Giratina Origin into Dragonair. The safe switch into the Gligar. Opponent sends in Bastiodon trying to catch an Aerial Ace, but I'm able to hold on to my energy, fire off the dig, and it connects for double super effective damage. Normally, Gligar can pretty comfortably win the 2s here, but considering I took a lot of damage from those Dragon Breaths, this could be difficult. So I go for the bait, I get the shield from the opponent. I think I'm going to have to double bait if I want to play for switch. This is very risky. I'm farming up. I'm going for the Aerial Ace. The Aerial Ace, oh my goodness, I really need them to shield this, and they do. And the Gligar, just before the smackdown, picks up the KO, makes it to the dig, knocks out the Bastiodon, and wins switch advantage. In the back, the opponent has Medicham. So this is a team that has been run before quite a few times. The Dragonair lead is basically called Dragonair plus Rock, Paper, Scissors backline, where you use the Dragonair to try and win switch. Opponent is going to send in the Dragonair. The Aqua Tail wouldn't do a ton here, but I'm running out of HP, so I'm going to shield it up and overfarm slightly. The reason being, I need to have enough energy to make it to a move versus the Medicham. In comes the Medicham, and it looks like that was charge attack priority, so the overfarm that we needed as Shadow Ball knocks out the Medicham, and we take the win. Moving into the next match, leading Giratina Origin into Skarmory. Again, not a bad matchup whatsoever. Skarm has to go for a Brave Bird to win the zeros here. And the nice thing here as the Giratina is you can pretty reliably win the 2s even if you go straight Shadow Ball. So this time I am going to go straight Shadow Ball. Opponent farms up a ton of energy. I'm going to be shielding here as they fire off the Sky Attack. I continue to farm up energy, going for yet another Shadow Ball, looking to apply some pressure to my opponent. They're going to be shielding up. they can win the ones going straight sky attack, so they could have no shielded there, but they decide to double shield. These Steel Wings are getting the Giratina low. They send in the Sableye. I'm able to bank the move, but I take a little bit too much damage on the Giratina. I was not fast on the switch when deciding what to send in. A bit of unfamiliarity with the team, but that can sometimes be the difference in matches. We'll have to see. The Zap Cannon connects. I do not get the debuff onto Sableye. Sableye will be able to fire off multiple foul plays before I'm able to make it to my next charge attack, and they'll be able to pick up the knockout. But honestly, I'm just looking for farm on Gligar at this point. Gligar with energy should hopefully do pretty well, and I have a move loaded so I can snipe the Skarmory when they send it back in, because they kind of have to send in the Skarmory, and they do. I send in the Giratina, I fire off the Shadow Ball, and that's going to be goodbye to the Skarmory. What do they have in back? It's a Whiscash. Giratina just cannot make it to a move, and that's game over. They have too much energy there. And that's one of the unfortunate things about this Giratina only being accessible by trade, is obviously there's one special trade per day. I was lucky enough to get one below 1500, but it's not like fully optimized IVs or anything like that. So if I had a more optimized IV Giratina, then maybe I can make it to that move, but unfortunately I do not, so I end up losing the game. Moving into the next match, picking up a very nice lead, the Giratina into the Deoxys, and the Lickitung save switch answered with the Registeel. So everything going perfectly alignment-wise in this match. I go for the Zap Cannon, it connects, and it gets the attack drop. So now I'm in a very commanding spot in this matchup. They go for the Body Slam. The Body Slam and Licks, I mean, they already don't do a lot. Add a Zap Cannon debuff, and they're doing even less. In this instance, going for a full power Zap Cannon is a mistake. What I want to do here is go for an undercharge. An undercharge is going to allow me to go for a full farm down and exit with energy so I can make it to a Zap Cannon versus the Deoxys. This is, in my view, the difference between just playing Registeel and really like having a good grasp on how to maximize it and get the most bang for your buck when playing Registeel. Like, I'm able to not only get rid of the Lickitung, but make a move versus the Deoxys, get it pretty low. In the back, however, they have Guzzlord, and this is a problem. Guzzlord is up energy. I'm going to be shielding as they go for the Dragon Claw, and I'm going to start going for Aerial Ace baits. The Aerial Ace doesn't do a lot of damage here, but this is a Great League Guzzlord. It's not the tankiest Pokemon ever. I'm able to grab the first shield, I build up to the dig, and I'm going for Aerial Ace number 2. The opponent is going to double shield. They're firing off energy. I'm going to be shielding up, and this is very tough. I shield up the Dragon Claw. I decide to go for the Aerial Ace. I don't throw on the greatest timing ever. I just want this damage. Maybe I can make it to a second one here. My opponent doesn't want to risk it. In hindsight, I think they get that farm down if they go for it. And now the question is, can they make it to a move? They get KO'd as they make it to the move. In comes the Deoxys, and I have the Shadow Ball loaded, and Shadow Ball will be enough to pick up the KO. So definitely not a clean game, but we're able to take the win. Moving into the next match, hitting Giratina Origin into Shadow Dragonair. Again, with the Dragonair lead, just a safe switch into the Gligar. Opponent sends in the Lickitung, and I have a massive energy head start. I fire off the dig, they commit the shield, so they are making their intentions known. They do not want to give up switch advantage under any circumstances. So I'm just going to not shield the Gligar. I'm able to land a dig on charge attack priority. It does some very nice damage. My opponent is going to go for the Body Slam. The question is, can I hang on and make it to the Aerial Ace? No, I cannot. As I get there, I am going to get knocked out. This is a really uncomfortable health range because it's not really in a range where I can go for a lock-on farm down. And I have Shadow Claw on my Giratina, so it's not like I can really farm down there either. I'm thinking maybe the best play is going to be to just bank energy, send in the Giratina, and see what they want to do. They send in the Dragonair. Dragonair can go for the Aqua Tail, but it won't knock out. I know that I can withstand the damage. It is going to be resisted, and then I'm just going to full send the Shadow Ball. I'm hoping they decide to let this through. But Shadow Dragonairs, they love to double shield. So they're going to be shielding up, getting the farm down. I send in the Registeel, but of course I will lose charge attack priority. So I am finally going to use a shield in this match. But there's still that Lickitung, and it's still with that problematic health range where I'm not able to go for a lock-on down. So they make absolutely the right play here. They send in the Lickitung, understanding I can't farm down. I'm forced to use a 75 energy Focus Blast to get rid of it. And then, unless it's something like, I don't even know, a Mantine in the back, there's no winning for me here. And It is a water type, but it's the water electric Lantern, and Lantern is going to take the win. Hopping into the final match, leading Giratina Origin into Whiscash, opponent save switches into Shadow Dragonair. I bank a little bit of energy on the Giratina, and then I send in the Reggie. Reggie is going to be hit with the Aqua Tail from the Shadow Dragonair, and honestly, pretty okay with that. Look to overfarm, but I accidentally throw one lock on too many and play to a CMP tie that I do not win. Definitely not ideal, as since they've landed a second Aqua Tail, the opponent might try and make a play for swap, and they do. They're going to be shielding up here. I am going to be able to make it to another Focus Blast, and it looks like they're just going to go for a double shield and farm down, and just look to exit with a truly massive amount of energy. I do wall the energy on the Giratina, so I can send in the Giratina, and know that Aqua Tail not going to be doing a whole lot. So they are going to go for the Aqua Tail. I'm able to absorb that damage. They send in Shadow Gligar, and I'm able to make it to the Shadow Ball. This Shadow Ball will not knock out from this range, but it's going to do a lot. I switch into my own Gligar, and I get the Wing Attack through. Getting that Wing Attack through is extremely consequential, as I'm going to be able to get a full farm down. They get KO'd just as they make it to the Aerial Ace. In the back, they have Whiscash. I'm going to go for the dig just before they're able to make it to the Scald. I need to land this damage before a potential debuff gets applied. That dig does quite a lot of damage. I still have shields to hide behind, so I'm going to do exactly that. Opponent sends in Dragonair. Dragonair is going to win charge attack priority as I fire off the Aerial Ace. And now I'm going to go for an undercharge. This undercharge is going to allow me to get a nice farm down and exit with energy. I'm going to be met with the Whiscash. I switch out into the Giratina, forcing them to go for the Mud Bomb. They try and overfarm as much as possible, but that allows me to make it to an Ominous Wind, pick up the KO, and take the win. All in all, I was pleasantly surprised by how strong I felt the Great League Giratina Origin was in practice, and I do want to run through some of the positives and the negatives that I encountered while I played with it. First off, the positives. Its attack stat is pretty nice. It's around 120, I believe, when I checked on PvPoke, which means that you're going to win some very nice charge attack priority ties against some meta Pokemon, but it's not so high that you sacrifice a lot of bulk. Its overall stat product, if I'm remembering correctly, was around mid-1800s, so you're able to win some nice charge attack priority ties, but you still have about average bulk, which is quite nice. And secondly, I will say a bit of a negative is of course going to be that it has 0 coverage moves. Ghost for the fast attack and Ghost for the 2 charge attacks. However, if you're in these neutral situations where the opponent doesn't resist Ghost, this allows it to do very, very well neutrally. Being able to pick up some neutral even shield scenario wins over some really strong meta Pokemon like the Skarmory and Whiscash core that is absolutely everywhere, those are some really nice meta wins to have. I will say a downside for the Giratina Origin, outside of the fact that it is just mono ghost moves, is going to be sometimes it is a little bit slow to charge attacks. Having the pacing of 12 to the Ominous Wind and 14 to the Shadow Ball, it's pretty decent, but sometimes, especially in a meta where Whiscash is spamming out those Mud Bombs at 10, 8, 10, can feel a little bit slow sometimes. But overall, I felt like this is a very strong Pokemon. I wouldn't say it's top meta. Personally, I think it's a really good core breaker, more of an anti-meta role. I believe PvPoke has it ranked number 41 in the Open Great League, and I feel like that sounds about right. It's not in that top like 10 to 20 core meta Pokemon, but I think that you can use it and have a ton of success because it's a very unique set of defensive resistances plus coverage that a lot of teams aren't necessarily preparing for at the current moment. So it is one where once you complete the research, I think it is worth trying to trade it. If you're able to trade it with someone who has lower friendship, the better, as that way you will have better odds of actually getting one that's below 1500 CP. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you're enjoying the content, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. And a special thank you as always to our members here on YouTube. The support guys provide is sincerely appreciated. So thank you guys oh so very much. And until next time, I've been HomeSliceHenry.